Welcome to the Be That 1% podcast. I'm your host, James Silvis, mindset specialist and performance coach. And here on the show, I'm going to challenge you to think deeper, commit to greatness, and develop a stronger mindset. You'll hear stories from those who are living life on their terms, and you'll receive strategies that will help you level up. So the question is, are you ready to be your own 1%? Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Be That 1% podcast. This is your host, James Silvis. Thank you for being here. If this is your first time, welcome. This show is all about helping you be your best, live life on your terms. And if you're a return listener, you know the drill. Welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about adult friendships. Friendships of any kind are important, right? Any relationship that is meaningful to us can be what supports our growth and helps us expand, or it can be a great source of frustration and emotional turmoil. And it just depends on how we navigate those interactions. And I feel extremely grateful to have the two individuals on this podcast episode today, who I call my best friends, to have had them in my life for the last 15 years. To call them best friends is a privilege, is an honor. I'm so grateful. I learned so much from both of them. And I was thinking about how can we share some real organic truths about what it's like to have a friendship like that started early teenagers and now into mid-30s, and going and living together and traveling together and having kids and getting married and buying houses and like all that stuff. And so I hope that you enjoy this episode, this organic flow, loosely structured conversation with two of my best friends. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of the community. And now on to the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Be That 1% podcast. Today is going to be very organic. I have two of my best friends on the show today, and they've played a large part of who I am in my life. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves on who they are, and from there we're just going to have a very casual conversation about adult friendships and how we've managed to stay close and continue to evolve for the last 15 years. So hope you enjoy this kind of very loosely structured but all with love podcast episode. So who wants to go first?
I feel like the Spider-Man meme right now. You. Well, I'll kick it off. Boys, can I just, first and foremost, it is so good to see you guys. Has it been about 2 weeks since we did a little virtual hangout?
Yes.
So great to see you both. You both look amazing as always. I am Seth. I have been best friends with these guys since, just after high school. We've known each other before that, of course, but these two guys have been some of the most influential men in my life. Had a lot of good times, which I'm sure we'll dive into a little bit. But I also have a daughter by the name of Capri. She's 3.5, and she's absolutely amazing. I have a beautiful wife named Courtney, and I'm just thrilled to see you guys. So that's a little on me.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name's Johnny. Been best friends with James and Seth since, Seth and I met in middle school, so way back when, and then James and I were buddies in senior year of high school, and then became college roommates, and didn't take long before we were literally the best friends. So excited to be hanging out with you both, and excited to talk about this topic too, because I think it's a tough one, realistically, for a lot of people our age, I think, trying to maintain friendships.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
and tough for us.
Yeah, it's been hard.
Yeah, like both of you moved from Vegas.
Yeah,
like
yeah, I think maybe
start there. Like that was, so Johnny left first, right? And then Seth recently just left within the last 4 months. Seth, is that right?
Yeah, back in June. Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to hear. I'll tell you guys how I felt. I mean, it was sad because and it's sad because when you were living here, we didn't hang out as much as we should, which is because of, lots of reasons, kids, work, also they're excuses, but also they're valid. So, but then when you're gone, when you moved first, that was different. When Seth and I would hang out without you, there was obviously a void. It was nice to have that solo time that wasn't there when we had us three, but at the same time, that third dimension adds something unique to relationships. Like friendships of two versus friendships of three are completely different in my opinion. I don't know. We've talked about this like long time ago, but that third edition, that a lot of things can then happen. Like two can go against one. A conversation can quickly go in a different direction. Depending on who's feeling what on that night or in that occasion, like the night can shift quickly. But not having you there, Johnny, initially was really, really hard. And then Seth, you now leaving, I was like, damn, like my homies, they're gone. And virtual calls, yes, but it's forced me to be more proactive in sending you like those texts and songs that are resonating with me, and I'll be the first to admit that I haven't called you guys as much as I should have, and I think there's always room for improvement there, but it hurt.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack, but it's like, first of all, just so the audience knows, like we all grew up together basically, like in our high school, college years, and then past college. And and we all lived in the same city. So we all got to hang out all the time. And I think there's like an aspect of taking that for granted that is real. So for, people who live nearby each other, if you're not hanging out with your closest friends all the time, from people who have been separated now by geography, like it's a huge thing. But I do feel like I reflect back on those times and think like, dang, we did not take full advantage of our proximity, especially towards the last few years. But the other thing to share for context is like we're all married. We all have kids, and we have full-time jobs, and that all complicates the time negotiation, right? So there's the time that you have to carve out to pour into this, right? It's super important. So I'm glad we're doing this. I'm glad that we find ways to meet virtually, that we live in this era where we can do this. But I do think there's something about the in-person, like we all got to see each other recently in person, and that, 3-4 hour window, there's something to that. So, and yeah. So anyway, well, I want to get back to what you said about threes, because that was really interesting.
Yeah.
You can't make a shape with 2 points. You ever think about that? Like there's no shape that only has 2 points. A line isn't really a shape. It's just a line.
Yeah.
But a triangle has 3 points. That's where it starts. And then you have, a square and a octagon or whatever. But there's something about that's what the third person does. Like it adds a different dimension to it. Look, there's clues in nature.
That's Jay. I believe it, bro.
Do you guys recall from Silicon Valley the conjoined triangles of success?
Oh, the show. Yeah.
That's all I could.
I don't remember the conjoined triangles of success, but I would if you played the episode for me.
Yeah, it was fantastic. That's all I could think about in my head when you were making that point. But we should say it should not go unacknowledged that we did somewhat live together for a little while. I mean, I was kind of like an honorary member that didn't pay rent when you two were actually roommates. A lot of good times, but that's where I would push back on you a little bit, Johnny, in the sense of not taking full advantage of the time. I think that maybe we didn't recognize just how great those times were when you're in the thick of it. In fact, I heard a quote the other day that was really, really good, which was, "I wish somebody had told me that I was in the good times, like in the good times." And granted, I think we're all very, very lucky. Like every stage of our life has been like just amazing with full, like, or just full, like, right. The family chapter now was wonderful. I'm not saying this is worse than that by any means. But like, I do think we took advantage of the time we had. And John, to your point, you did say like kind of in those later years, that's when we were starting families. That's when we were making those big decisions with our significant others and things like that. So I want to give us a little bit of credit. I think we definitely did. But I do agree with you that had we known these moves were coming, not being geographically close to one another, there's probably more we would have done, especially in those latter years.
Mm-hmm. True. What do you think? Like, let's go back to college, right? Not a lot of responsibility, spontaneous, lots of laughs, lots of traveling, lots of newness, right? I think, how important do you think the first couple years of a friendship are? And what elements within those few years do you think are important for people either to like recognize, talk about, instill, reinforce? Like, I don't know, what comes through for you guys?
I feel like there's different dimensions of an individual. So I have my like work dimension.
Mm-hmm.
I have my like my creative dimension. I have my intimate dimension, my introspective dimension. Like there's different parts of me,
Mm-hmm.
and depending on the relationship, like it always starts in a certain place.
Yeah.
So right now, I moved out here. I live in Austin. I have a lot of work friends, and a lot of them I really enjoy spending time with. But the dimension that they see of me is my work dimension, right? And maybe I let them in a little bit on like how I am personally, or I share some other thing about me with them, but really the core is the work aspect. Like that's the common ground that we share.
Mm-hmm.
What I think makes our friendship special, one of the things is that we've gone through so many key parts of life together that there really is no part of me that the two of you don't know intimately. You know me and my work because I've opened up to you guys about my work, and how it makes me feel, and like my goals and my aspirations in that realm. I've talked to you about my family life, like my mom and my grandparents, and that part of me. My childhood. My relationship with my wife. My relationship with my kids. Like so many different parts of me that no one really has a full view of, that you all have seen all of. So I think like your question is, how important is the first part? I actually think, I mean, it is important, but it's not as important as like almost doing the full marathon of a person, as you get to know them in your relationship,
Mm-hmm.
To bring in to like strengthening the bond. Like nobody knows me the way the two of you do, and it's because we've shared so many experiences. It doesn't really matter where we started.
Yeah. What I think about is like on the couch one night, it was you, me, and Kostin. I don't know if you remember this. And like we were challenging each other on areas that we didn't know about one another, and areas that we thought each of us could do better in.
I remember that.
Right. And that was early. That was like within the first year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
And I think it's moments like that that open the door to new aspects of you. And if that's not said, I don't know if those things get talked about.
Yeah. But was that early? Like relatively? Because relative to our friendship now, it was early. But relative to our friendships then, we were pretty deep in at that point by the time we were ready to have a conversation like that. Do you know what I mean? Like a year and a half into a collegiate friendship when we just got out of high school, that's a long time. I don't know, relatively, that might be a longer time.
Yeah. The time period that I was thinking about was like 2 years, like that chunk of time as a friend.
Is like pivotal,
I think.
Yeah.
Because it's establishing a way of communicating.
Yeah.
Right? Are we going to be superficial with what we do? Are we going to just have fun? Are we only going to stick to like business and professional side? And I think 2 years is a good enough time to see enough to say whether I trust this person or I want to learn more about this person, and then have the courage to actually ask or share in whatever context or space gets created. And I think we've done that really well. That's one thing that I'm very grateful for. And there have been moments where we have not been shy on holding back how we feel, to the point where like it caused almost a fight.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead, Seth.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think about your original question and like the context of those first 2 years, right? And I think something that was at least very important for me, I won't speak for you guys, but was like finding acceptance through those you admire, right? You two were individuals who I admired a lot for very, very different reasons, and you guys just happen to have this, friendship established already. For a little background, right? Like, I transferred high school as my senior year, and so I ended up going to Foothill, and James was the star quarterback. Johnny and I never really crossed paths, even though we had known each other from dating back to the seventh grade from our junior high school. And then, I was on the football team as well. It's why I transferred to Foothill, lost all my confidence, got injured. And James is like this absolute rock star, mega star, right? Homecoming king. And then, fast forward to after high school, I'm working at 24 Hour Fitness. James is working there. And of course, that's where I see Johnny more and more. And I'm like, damn, that's James Silvis over there, I was like, that dude's a stud. I was like, I want to work out with that guy, because I think we literally said one word to each other all that entire senior year, like we didn't talk, and then like that's where things started over because I had that admiration for you as an athlete and for your personality. And then when you and I clicked and wanted to work out together, like it just blossomed from there, right? And then not too far later, I'm hanging out with Johnny at a Halloween party, and we're reconnecting about getting to know each other in the seventh grade, and just how wild it is that we're here right now. And here's a guy that has always been the most intelligent man in any room I've ever been in. And I have just so much admiration for how he carries himself as an individual and for the intelligence he has and the respect he commands. And, it was having that acceptance from both of you, two men I respected and admired so much, that allowed me to be more vulnerable, probably more quickly than I would have been with anybody else, because whether it's just a respect factor, again, the word admiration, that was very much there for me.
That I think there's something there, because I had a very similar experience when I first met the two of you at different stages. Part of why I wanted to be friends with you both, as a young man trying to find his way in the world, is because I looked up to both of you for different reasons. To James, I looked up to you because a lot similar to what Seth said, like, you were super athletic, you were in shape. That was something that I was never really taught growing up. So like how to exercise, how to eat right, and take care of your body. And so that was something that immediately you started to teach me. And then similarly from Seth, like I also admired his like discipline. Like he had a different level of discipline that I wasn't used to seeing. And Seth was just always more he was willing to take risks. And like growing up, I was never a risk taker. And so one of the things I admired about Seth right away was like how courageous he was. Like he was courageous in multiple aspects of his life, whether it was like chasing a new career or
walking up to a girl,
walking up to a girl, whatever it was. Like he was just very courageous. And so that was the intrigue to be friends with both of you, because I wanted to learn from each of you in that way. And that desire to learn is probably similar to what you're saying, Seth. Like the reason that it's not even like I let my guard down. My guard was never up. I was like, I'm open and I want to learn from both of you. So let's see if this friendship works. Like teach me what you know. And I think because we all had a mutual aspect of that, like each of us wanted to learn something from each other. That got us there to that vulnerable place quickly.
Yeah. So I feel the same way as well. Johnny, I remember you being in debate and the way you communicated and the way you told stories and like made points logically. I was like, dude, how does that guy do that? Like, how? And then, obviously that was like an intro. And then our girlfriends at the time dated. So that obviously made it easier. And for
Just
Seth, yeah,
point of clarification:
his wife.
our girlfriends did not date. Actually, we dated them, but our girlfriends were friends.
Did
Our
I say
girlfriends were
that?
friends with each other.
My
Yeah,
bad.
they did not. They didn't
Thanks for
date.
correcting me. That would have been a whole different type of friendship. Um, yeah. So then with Seth was like his charisma, his fun, playful, like uplifting side, which are aspects that I had, but not at that level. So there was I wouldn't even say a deficiency, but an area of improvement in the areas that both of you provided. So Seth, thank you for saying that. How important, I got to imagine that that's not the only way you can make a friend, but how important is that in establishing a friendship or even a strong, like, is that a recipe for a strong friendship?
I think it's an ingredient, right?
Yeah.
It's maybe not the whole recipe. Because I can think of people that I look up to, or that I admire for something or another that I don't really want to be friends with.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's it, but it's a key ingredient to a really strong friendship. If you have friends who maybe you share, like, well, let me go this direction. What are some of the other ingredients? So like, you got to have somebody that you click with. So personalities probably should be somewhat,
Similar,
not necessarily similar personalities, but like
complementary.
compatible. Yeah, complementary. Like I think the three of us are very different actually in our personalities, but that's what makes the whole thing kind of click together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's an aspect of it. There's like an aspect of maybe like shared vulnerability that's important. That's an ingredient where we're all willing to expose our um our insecurities to each other, and like there's you have to have somebody who you're willing to do that with, somebody who makes
Mm-hmm.
you feel safe to just vent or complain about things. But if like you only have one of those ingredients and not all of them, then I don't think it's as healthy, and I think some of them are more important maybe than others. Like this shared admiration thing, or just mutual respect, I guess another way you could
Yeah,
say it.
respect. Mm-hmm.
Like if that's not there, that's a key ingredient that the whole recipe falls apart. Um, but I think there's other things maybe that if that's not there, we thought when we were younger that it would fall apart, but as we've gotten older, it doesn't. Like one thing that I think about is like somebody who you like go out drinking with and have a crazy night. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a period of time in our friendship where we thought that was a key ingredient. Like if we don't have those nights where we just go out and be stupid, then the friendship's going to not be as meaningful, or it's going to fall apart. Like that's the source of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as we've gotten older, we've realized like that's actually not something that was an essential part of the friendship. I think even in hindsight, like if you go back and take those memories out, would things have been different? Probably, but would we still not have had the same level of friendship? I don't know. Like I think actually we'd probably still have had um as strong of a friendship. It wasn't as key of an ingredient as we maybe thought it was when we were
Yeah.
younger.
Well, I think all those crazy nights that I think about all had some freaking physical journey associated to them,
Yeah.
specifically the strip, but even with like things like beer pong or whatever, like we would do push-ups and like go run sprints, and like it was never just one dimensional. It was
Yeah.
always like multifaceted, the experience. And I think that us having our own elements that we brought to the relationship facilitated that. Like sometimes, like if we're tracking a 5-hour night, we might start at a place that I suggested, but then Johnny gets an idea to take it to the next place. And then while we're there, then Seth then is like, bro, I'm feeling this. And like the trust of knowing where the next place is going to go based on how someone is feeling and how they're able to articulate it. We're like, let's go. And so the night just kind of I don't want escalate is not the right word, but progressed organically and beautifully because all of us had say in where it was going and how it was going to play out.
Yeah. Yep. We also had some really terrible nights. I think it's worth acknowledging that we also had some really terrible nights, as do most people growing up in their, early 20s do. But I do think like those were also the fact that we were able to work through those and like wake up the next morning and address the issues that made us stronger. There was times, James, I think you mentioned it earlier, that like we got in arguments like during those nights, and then like had conversations to it on the back end. So those are all also like parts of the ingredients, that made us
the filler cement that brings it together. Yeah.
Well, Johnny, you alluded to this earlier, like having, forgive me, the word you used is escaping me, not facade, but multiple dimensions. Thank you. Multiple dimensions, right? And I think one of the key ingredients to the success of our friendship is we were exposed to more dimensions collectively, on our own journeys. Like if I was, for example, let's talk like, intimacy relationships, right? Like I leaned on your guys' advice in those moments. Or if it was something more career oriented, you guys are always a part of that. Which incredibly lucky to have both of you. I know not everybody does. So I do think that key ingredient that we talk about is, whether it's one dimension, multiple dimensions, it's someone on that similar journey with you. That's huge. Not that they have to be, because sometimes I just need to pick up the phone and one of you guys need to listen to me vent or whatever. Maybe I don't need to be challenged in that moment. Maybe it's just there to listen, right? But at the same time, like having that push, having that challenge, and going through those different dimensions together, I think is probably what sealed our bond, especially in like those early 20s, because we were urging to grow in so many different areas, right? That was something that was very, very urgent in our lives and was important to each of us.
Mm-hmm.
You made me think about something. So as you were saying that, Seth, you were talking about like going through shared experiences at the same time. And so part of that going back to the dimensions point, like if you have work friends, there's a point where you cross the boundary, if you know what I mean. Like it's like, oh, like so maybe one of them comes to your house for something, right? You have them over and you're like, there's that first moment you're like, this is kind of weird. Like I've only ever seen you at work, and now you're like in my home. Or like you have dinner with them, like maybe, and it's not a work dinner, like why is that weird?
Well,
and is it weird? Do you find it weird? Or am I a weirdo that like I find that crossing of the boundary to be uncomfortable? Like I actually actively avoid it.
I don't find it as weird as you do, because I wouldn't invite anyone to my house that I wouldn't want to build another deeper relationship with. So it's kind of like, if I want to get closer to you, then you got to know more about me. One of the ways you know more about me is for you to just come over to my house. Now you know where I live. Now you see pictures on the wall. Now you meet my wife. Now you meet my kids. I have some clients that I've developed great relationships with. When they come into town, I bring them over here because I'm okay with that. I'm okay with going deeper with them. But there are people like, bro, you ain't coming to my house. Like you're cool. Like we'll talk here. No.
Well, what I'm talking about specifically is like somebody that you really get along with, that you really like you click on that level, but it's in a different circle than your deepest personal circle. So it doesn't always have to be work. Like y'all know, I just recently started doing jujitsu. So it could be somebody in jujitsu that like I get along with, that, but they're a jujitsu friend, like we hang out at jujitsu and that's it. Or it could be like, I don't know, like if you take a class in school or something, it's like it's separate, a very specific circle, and then you like them. You talk, like you clearly connect. You could see yourself being friends with this person, but they are in this circle. And maybe that's part of my problem, is that I'm putting them in the circle and I shouldn't think about it that way. But I wanted to talk to you guys about this to see if this is a me thing or if you all relate. But like there is definitely this part of my brain that has trouble like breaking that circle or that sphere that like is around that person and saying like, no, you can actually be part of like other circles that I'm a part of too. Like, I want to let you into my life, not just my jujitsu, friend circle anymore.
Oh, let me ask you this. Have you always felt that way, or is this
100%.
something always?
I mean,
Even
as far back as I can remember, like, I don't know if I could think back farther than like,
say college.
yeah, before college, I felt this way.
Okay. See,
Do you not, you don't feel this way, Seth?
I'm 100% this way, but
okay.
I will say though,
Johnny's gonna have a heart attack if you didn't say yes.
I was like, no, I would have been okay with it because I do think there's a part of me that might just be, there might be something wrong with me. So, but
I don't think the reason why I asked you if you've always felt this way is because I don't think I always felt this way. Like, I feel like I was closer to James in that sense when I was younger. Like, I could, have work friends over, and granted, work when we were in our 20s wasn't quite the same as what it is now, but like,
right.
It's like, yeah, like everybody's welcome. What's your favorite drink? I'll make sure I have it for you when you show up. Like, I took a lot of pride in making people feel comfortable and opening up and having them in my home. And that has totally shifted. Like, I go into like full blown like social anxiety on the inside. I try not to show it, but I'm just like, once this gets weird, like I'm intermingling these circles, like you said, these circles now, and I'm just like, we're breaking a wall that we're not supposed to.
So great example. Yeah, great example. I was just in Vegas for a wedding, and it was Kim's best friend's wedding, and I knew literally zero people at the wedding other than the bride and the groom. I didn't know anybody on the bride side. I didn't know anybody on the groom side. We were sat at a table with other strangers that all knew the bride, and my social anxiety like maxed out. And I just like, the part of me is like, well, these are mutual friends of ours, right? Like, we are friends with the bride and groom. They are friends with the bride and groom. So like, introduce yourself, find out what they do, find out who they are, make friends with them. Why is that weird? But it was really hard for me to like overcome that in the moment. So why is that? And I've been this way, Seth, since I was a kid. Like, I remember being weird about people like coming to my house. Like, I would go to my friends' houses, but I would like, there were only like 2 friends that I ever let into my house. But it would, and like, my parents were always willing. Like, we had friends, like family friends, over all the time. Anytime somebody visited Vegas, they were invited to the house. They came over for dinner. So it's not like I learned it from them. It's just a very strange.
Did you like it when they came over, all those people?
Yeah, I always thought it was fun. They always brought me like a Lego or something as a kid. I was down.
I'm thinking of every person. I'm doing my best to think of all the people that have been to my house. And I won't say that every person that's been to my house, I've had an intimate like situation with them where there was some form of vulnerability shared. It's not 100%, but it's in the 90s.
Right.
Like, there's some mutual location where there was a level of intimacy that was reached to the point where it was cued that it was okay for them to come to the house.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. That resonates. I feel like I've reached that point with more people than have earned the right to come to my house. Like, and so if anyone's listening to this, if you've been to my house and Kim and I have made you dinner, you are in a very special club, very elite.
Write that on your list of accomplishments.
But like, there are people who I've thought, man, it would be really nice to have them over, but I just won't do it. And so I think like this speaks to this whole idea of adult friendships are hard to forge. I don't think I'm alone in this. I really don't. Like, I
don't think you are either. I don't think there's anything wrong with you.
Right.
I think you're totally alone in this.
Well, of course I'm alone. It's my own doing. I won't let anybody in my house. I'm destined to be alone. I think there's something about it, like, where people just like, especially in this day and age too, like, it's really hard to make friends at work. Nobody really wants to go out to happy hour after work anymore. Like, people like to keep their work and personal lives very separate. And part of this too is like, I work in the corporate world, right? So different, James, than a little bit, I think, for you, who you own your own business and you have clients that transcend maybe just the business relationship a lot of the times. But in the corporate world, it's just changed over the years. So I think that's some of it, but yeah, just adult friendships are really hard. So it makes the few that I have that go way, way back, more important. But, and I maybe just had an epiphany, I wonder if it's actually your fault.
Oh, shifting the blame. Let's hear the reasoning.
Hear me out. Is it because the friendship that I have with the two of you is so deep that the thought of like any other friendship would be, it pales in comparison. So it's like, it's weird to let somebody in to me personally, that isn't the two of you, because
I don't think that's
I think it's your fault.
It's not our fault.
I have a theory on this, and I'm not saying I believe in it. It just hit me while you guys were talking about this. So, bear with me here. Indulge me for a second. So one of this has to do with survival. All right. And what I mean by that is, if our survival mechanisms were different socially, right? Like, so maybe my survival when I was younger was, I need acceptance. I need to be like the life of the party. I need to be around people. And that's why I've had this shift, because I no longer need that in my life. Like, I cherish my family time and I cherish my time with you guys. And that's like, as far as like needs list, like it's pretty much you guys and family and that's it. Right. So maybe for me, that's that shift, because my survival needs have been met. Whereas, when we were younger, James, maybe your survival mechanism was, again, kind of that same thing as mine early on, but you've like continued down that path to where it's maybe more habitual now. It's like, yeah, like I've always like surrounded myself with good people, and I want to attract good people because I have so much good to give this world, and people I want to share this with. And then Johnny, maybe maybe you're in that camp where, since it's always been, odd for you, your survival was the opposite. It was to kind of stay more isolated, and you felt more comfortable there. And like, maybe we pushed you and brought certain elements out of you as far as your outgoing side, because you are very, very outgoing when you want to be. But you're just settled into this place where it's like, no, like, my survival needs are being met. Just a thought.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want people to come over to your house, Johnny?
I think like, okay, let me put it this way. You box, James, right?
Yeah.
If your boxing coach was like, James, I want you over for dinner, would you be like, oh shit, what am I going to say? I don't want to go to dinner. Or would you be like, this is so nice, I would love to join you for dinner? What would be your natural reaction?
My natural reaction would be like, this is nice, but it's more on the reserve side.
Okay. That's what I mean. So like, so then you get exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's that there's a person in everyone's life, and I picked on your boxing coach. I'm sure he's a wonderful person.
Yeah.
Nothing, but every person has somebody in their life where you share something in common, or you have a certain relationship that is based off of something that isn't just pure friendship, right? It's a work relationship, or it's a coach and a trainee, it's a something. And but like, we click, like we're cool, like we get along, you get me, I get you. We talk about, like, while we have this shared experience that is very specific, we talk about things that are not just that experience. But then the second there's a proposal from one of the two parties to take the relationship and take it out of its normal element and put it somewhere else in a different environment, I feel like that is the moment that this goes back, like the dimensions thing, right? Like that's the moment that it becomes like, okay, now we're friends. We're not just work people. Like, we don't just work together, meaning like, if I lost my job, or if I transferred jobs, or if you transfer jobs, like, we're not going to keep in touch. Yeah. But like, if you come to dinner, or if we go do something else that's not work together, now we're friends. So it would be weird now if
Mm-hmm.
suddenly the work thing wasn't there anymore, if we just stopped talking.
Mm-hmm.
That's the moment I think a friendship, especially in adulthood, is forged.
Yeah.
And that's why maybe there's an apprehension to engage, because it's like a risk. You really want to consider, like, is this somebody that I want to be my friend more than just like my work
Yeah.
acquaintance or my
I
boss?
can see that. And then I also look at it as like a trial. Like it's like, okay, we're going to take it out of its original origin space and we're going to go to a new space. Let's see how that goes. And if it
Yeah.
goes well, awesome. If it doesn't, well, hey, we tried it and we're definitely not going to be friends, you know? I think there is going to be an initial resistance because it's not going against the status quo of like what always has been up until that moment. And I think if you're not that, I'm not saying you, but if anyone wants additional friendships, like that's just I think a necessary part of it. That resistance initially can be a lot of resistance, or it could be a minor little like thought, like, yeah, it could be super quick. But
it's interesting though, like if we're circling back to the beginning of this conversation, which is like the timing and like the how important the early stages of friendships are. Like I actually think about my past and back when I was personal training. So this was in my adulthood, and I realized like, oh wait, I'm in these like super like vulnerable environments with these people, and these are some friends I've had outside of you guys, for a very, very long time in my life because my environment almost promoted that openness,
mm-hmm.
right? And it's not like every single client I was good friends with by any means, but I did establish some pretty lengthy relationships through that business. And James, I think your environment is obviously very, very similar with what you do day in and day out. Johnny, I think you in your current role and now me in my current role, we're overcoming a lot of environment to get there if that is what we want to do. And then if we're feeling that in this corporate environment, you better believe the person that you're maybe trying or debating whether or not to connect with is also having the same experience. So I think it's a lot to overcome. Not that it can't be overcome. It's just you are taking something out of the environment that has always existed since the beginning of you knowing this individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So two things, Johnny, to your point about owning my own business and being more selective with who I get to work with, there's already a natural built-in affinity for the people that I work with because we think similarly, where we may both own our own businesses, we're, growth oriented, and there's a selection process that kind of already brings the relationship closer. Whereas in the corporate space, everyone's kind of from a lot of different places. You don't necessarily know why they're working there, or, how it's kind of, you're just all thrown into an environment, and then you're kind of sifting through who you want to be associated with or learn more about. And that adds more barriers. Whereas mine, there's not as many. So I think that definitely could be playing into it. The second thing was it made me think of just marriages in general, because that's a form of relationship. I was listening to, oh gosh, I'm going to blank on his name. He wrote a book called, it was about happiness. He's on Oprah's reading list. He's a professor, I believe, out of Harvard. I'm not going to get his name, but I'll find it before the end of the episode after I'm done.
Arthur C. Brooks?
Yeah, Arthur Brooks. Thank you. He made a point on one of his podcasts that the marriages that last the longest are the ones that start the earliest. Because when you're younger, you have less beliefs formed about the world. You're naturally more open, more adventurous. So you're less picky and you have less baggage. And so as you form early bonds and grow together, you each have new stages that you're doing life with. It's like a startup. He calls them startup relationships, where you're both vested, you're building this thing, and it has a long like track run. Like it's going to be more successful on average according to the data. Then you have like the people who maybe don't have relationships and then or get married and divorced, and they have their jobs, their careers, their kids, more baggage, more thought process, more standards, makes it harder to find a couple or like to get married and to make it last. That's like the second longest. And then the third is like he calls them hostile takeovers, where it's just like completely like business oriented or just for all the wrong reasons. I forget what exactly he said for that, but the one that stood out to me was the earliest ones last the longest. And I thought about my relationship with Amanda, because we met when we were 21. Johnny, you've known Kim since 17, 16, 17?
I was 15.
15.
I was 15 and Kim
Yeah,
was
bro.
16. Yeah. So
and
Cradle robber.
and some of the all the relationships that I know, all the marriages that I know that have lasted 10, 20, 30 years, they also met super young. I'm not saying that it's impossible to stay married or to find marriage after that, but it gets harder.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And I think going to go back to our friendship, then I think, maybe we open back up the question that you asked earlier, like, does it matter how it starts? Maybe it matters when it starts. Cause like we have been friends since we were kids, really. And that is a part of why I think our friendship is so strong, is that we have grown up together, gone through key pivotal life moments together. We turned 18 together. We turned 21 together. We went, through college together, and marriages and, having kids now, and job changes, and all of those like key life moments. We bought houses together, like around, similar times. And like, all of those moments, we were side by side with each other. One of us went, and then the other one followed, and the next thing, one of us went, and the other, like Seth was the first one to buy a house. I think James, wait, who got married first? We got married first. You got married first.
I got married first.
You got married first. James was the first one to get married. I was the first one to have kids. Like we all.
I was the first one to get divorced.
We're not following you on that one, hopefully. But the point is like going first and then following, and like having these key life moments, and even the ones that we didn't share. Like, I mean, we joke about Seth, you getting divorced, but like that brought us closer together. And that was like something that was really an important and meaningful life decision that has panned out beautifully for you. And it's like there's those types of experience, especially when you go back to like when we were kids, like you can't recreate that with a new friendship that I make now. Right. So it's not ever going to be the same. That's what makes, I think that's the other part about adult friendships, makes them so hard to find out after you get over the anxiety about inviting them over to your house for dinner. It is just, like, how do you lay that strong of a foundation with anyone at this age?
Well, it's a good question. And I'm thinking about all the people that were at my wedding, right? All my groomsmen. I think I had 10.
You're rolling deep.
Yeah, there's a lot. And I still talk to all of them, but the proximity, the closeness, and the time spent in those relationships has definitely significantly decreased. But then I think about some of my strongest relationships outside of both of you, and 3 people come to mind, and those people came after, like a year or 2 after I got married. And I can't imagine life without them either. And one of them is the godfather to my son. That never would have happened if I wasn't open enough to having additional relationships in my life that evolved into something I never could have imagined. But now that they are where they are, it makes life more rich. And they offer things that you both can't, because of where that relationship was and how it happened. And although it may never get as deep as ours, it is still deep, and it is still meaningful, and it does still provide so much value and a robustness of perspective and life experience. And I'm grateful for that, for sure.
Yeah. So that I wanted to ask Seth this. He and I now both live in foreign states or foreign cities, like meaning we didn't grow up here. I live in Austin. Seth lives in San Diego, or Escondido, technically, right?
It's not San Diego County. Yeah.
San Diego. Yeah. So we'll just say San Diego. So have you made friends yet?
No, no. I've had multiple conversations with the staff at my daughter's school.
Nibbles, nibbles.
Nibbles. No, I mean, granted, it's a little bit different for me, right? My work is fully remote. So, this is my office, right? Working at the dining table essentially right now. So, um, yeah, it's something I do plan on working on. I've actually been thinking about joining a flag football league out here just
Mm.
to generate some new friendships and also have the, competitiveness going again. But
Do
to answer your
do
question, no.
do none of your work friends or work workmates, I don't know where you say colleagues, do none of
Fellows.
them your work fellows, do none of them live in San Diego?
So we do actually have four people that I work with who do live here. I've actually met three of them, but we don't work. Our working relationship is not one that's like I speak to them every single day. It's more I'm in a management role for them, so they're kind of just letting me know if they need something, or I say like, hey, like I noticed
So
that
you're their
it's our
boss.
yeah,
Okay,
essentially.
that's a little different then. But none of your peers work
No,
or live in San Diego. You're the only one. Okay.
they're back east for the most part.
Got it. So you go, okay, so you get into flag football, you meet somebody who's like, this dude's cool. I have that mutual respect for them. I could learn something from them. I like what they do. I'm interested to learn more. Um, what do you do next? Do you say like, hey, what are you doing after this?
But you gotta
Pass the
you gotta
tacos.
feel it out a little bit. A better example was back in Vegas. I was going through my EMT stuff, right? So um I was in my EMT advanced class early, at the beginning of the year, and there was one dude that I hit it off with in class. I was like, man, like I we link up. We've had some conversations outside of the profession, just getting to know him personally. And even then, there was still that little bit of hesitation. I was like, man, like what if it like just goes totally south when like
Yeah.
he comes over, But I was like, I'm gonna do it. And so when we had planned to get together, and then I ended up and moving here, so it never came to fruition. But I had gotten to the point where I was absolutely sending that invite out. Obviously, the timing just didn't work out. But that was once even living back home in Vegas. Like that was the first new quote unquote friendship I was trying to start in a very long time.
Yeah. It's the fear of like where you say, what if it goes south? I think the way I would because I align with that perfectly. I think the way I'd articulate it, the to like explain that feeling is, and not consciously, right? This is happening subconsciously. The aversion, I'm only like now realizing where it's probably coming from, is it's like a fear of not being able to be fully myself in that environment. Like at work or at flag football or whatever, you are a certain version of you in that scene, right? But when you then go out and do something different, it's like this right now, like I'm being very just open about how I'm feeling and thinking or whatever stream of consciousness. So I wonder, like, I worry about, can I do that with this person? Are they going to think I'm crazy? Um, and is that going to then translate into our normal relationship that we have, which I can't escape unless I quit flag football or quit jujitsu or quit my job. I'm going to have to go back to that. Now they know more about me that maybe I didn't want them to know, or like how, that I think it's that fear of like being willing to be yourself and being willing to be vulnerable.
What don't you want them to know?
I don't know that I'm a head case that
Aren't we all?
yeah, probably. Yeah. I don't know. You're right. No, it doesn't make logical sense. And it's not like like I said, it's not a conscious thing. I'm like, ooh, I don't want to go like do something different with this person because they're gonna get to know me and maybe they don't like me as much. It's not like I'm thinking about it. It's just like there's that feeling like, oh, I don't know. Do I really want to take this relationship to the next level? Probably not.
Yeah.
It's easier.
Ooh,
It's easier if I don't.
okay, let me ask you this, and James, you can answer this as well. Like, do you guys feel as if sometimes when you have that inkling to maybe expand that friendship or that relationship, that there's this part of you that just deep down inside is like, yeah, I'm not willing to take it that far. Like, I don't actually care. It's not that I don't care about this person or this individual, but I don't want to work that hard at a friendship.
Or like, I just don't have time for another friend. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think there is truth to the time piece because as you have two kids and a career and an amazing wife, you like any spare moment you do want to spend with them. So there is some legitimacy to that thought process. I mean, I've definitely felt that. I also think, Johnny, you mentioned earlier that like it's our fault for so like not solving, but like filling a lot of your needs. Like you're like, I don't need it. Like I already have it. So what's the point? Like it doesn't make sense to have any more if I already got what I need. And there also is truth to that. And I guess what I'll say to both of those is those are also very convenient excuses to use to not put in the work to have another friendship if you do desire that. And I don't know where you lie on that, but that's something that I think about. I mean, I'm traveling to different cities. I have a lot going on my plate, and for the right person, if I have the right connection, I do make time, although it's not like every weekend. I do make time to sit down with those people, even if it's for coffee, to keep that relationship, at a reasonable level of depth that provides value for both sides.
Yeah, I think the connection piece is so vital. I mean, it's vital at any stage of life, right? But yeah, I think back to when, for those of you, well, nobody knows this except for us because it never came to, but we wanted to start a company many, many years ago called GymWire.
Dude, I was thinking about this on my run. Like in Vegas, I went for a run in Vegas and I was thinking about GymWire while I was running.
Dude,
Sorry to interrupt you.
One of the greatest apps ever. That never happened.
Greatest app that never was. God
Yeah,
damn,
one of the
we made
greatest
so much
apps
on that.
never.
But the point I'm trying to make here is that we were in a place where like we had connections within our friendship for many different reasons, many different dynamics. We've already established that. But we found this commonality on this thing where, we all had girlfriends at the time. We had, not as much responsibilities requiring time that we do now, but we still had responsibilities. And so it was like, okay, we're meeting up at 9 o'clock at night and we're going to work on this till 1 in the morning. And then we'll go home. And guess what? We're going to do it all over again tomorrow. And we loved it. We were in it. And I just think that finding those connection points now at this stage of life is probably a little bit more challenging just because we do get a little set in our ways. And, something I actually have been meaning to ask since we started this conversation too, that will tie this all together. I'm at Capri soccer practice last week. One of the dads comes up to me, and I kid you not, this is like my biggest fear as a parent, like socializing with other parents.
Same.
I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it.
Nope.
I'm not saying it's weird that people do it. It's just weird for me. Like
it's weird for me too. It is weird. It's objectively weird.
Your kid is fantastic. Your kid is amazing. I do not care about them.
Not
I
at
don't
all.
care about my child. That's
I don't even want to know their name.
I care about their influence on my child.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. That's true. But he
comes up to you. Yeah,
he comes up to me. We're just shooting the breeze, I'm like, hey, like how long you lived here, yada yada yada. And it was very, very brief. Fast forward to today, back at soccer practice, and I'm just like, I'm not in an open mood just because work was a little crazy today. We've had a few things going on at the house, as I mentioned earlier. So I was just like, I'm here to see my kid, and that's it. And he comes up to me, and I'm like, what's up, man?
Hey.
That was it. And I felt credit to him. I think he got the vibe. It was just like, hey, we're saying hello. It's cool, but like today's not the day. But now every time I go to soccer practice, I'm like, fuck. Like that is just gonna linger over my head, the possibility of having to do something more than I want to do.
Dude, I feel that so much. Yes.
All right,
what is wrong with us?
I'm not the only one.
No. Well, so here's something that you made me think of, Seth. I think it depends on the level of self-awareness that both sides have. Because if you look at time, and within that time, look at our relationship, right? Time and milestones and and conversations that have happened in that time, the more self-aware an individual is, the more they can condense time in a conversation and save the other party from having to ask certain questions potentially that can already just be expressed by how one articulates or one shows up or what one embodies, that I think can create a faster connection and move it to a space that it wasn't originated in. And lots of people have different levels of self-awareness, but I'm thinking about the people that I've clicked with the fastest have been the people who are already on like the self-awareness journey. They're already at a certain level of life. They think about life in a very specific way. And it's like it's like a radar or an antenna that I have learned to pick up on. It's like, that guy gets it. Like, I'm open to having more conversations because of what they say, what questions they ask, how they interact with their family, or how they like talk to other people. Like, I'm noticing all those things, maybe a lot unconsciously, but that to me also signals this is a potential welcoming of a new relationship. And I don't know at what level that relationship will be at, but I'm opening up the first step to seeing what that might be. But I think it comes back to self-awareness.
I agree with that. Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a certain, like, people who are not self-aware, annoy me like crazy.
Instant checkout. It's like,
yep,
I'm wasting my time here.
Exactly. Yeah. And I want you to get as far away from me as you possibly can.
You will never come over to my house.
Never. No, you won't even step foot in my driveway.
So speaking of self-awareness, this, makes me actually think of prior to our friendship. Like, if someone's listening right now and is curious, like, man, like I'm hearing all these great stories, and or maybe like aspects of accountability or respect or admiration I'm seeking in a friendship now with somebody I don't have, or maybe somebody like is doing the exact opposite for them in a friendship. Like, can you guys think of a time, and you don't have to name names or anything, but like of before we became friends, or that transition of becoming like best friends? Because we all had different friends, of course, and we're in different circles. Like, not to say you wanted to sever that relationship, but I think it was probably more organic than that. But can you speak to a time and maybe some of the difficulties? So someone who's maybe considering that could say like, oh yeah, like this is what I can expect if this is something I feel I need to do for my life.
Do you want to go first, Johnny, or let me?
You go first, and
Okay.
I have two. I'll share.
So I have the relationship that I'm thinking about is more so right out of high school into college, like right around the time that I met you guys. That's one key one that I know was difficult to navigate. Now, I wasn't nearly as self-aware as I am now. So I didn't necessarily know how to handle it. But I think in high school, I was very open in a lot of ways to having certain types of friendships because of the clubs that I was in, or just the bond that we had formed within the space that we were in, particularly with football or, DECA or these other, Stuco, those types of clubs. And I was friends with this person, really good friends. And, I thought that relationship was going to last a long time. And up until that time, it was a very close relationship. Knew a lot about me. We hung out. We talked about a lot of things. I didn't really change who I was being with this person, but I also didn't check certain behaviors as, strictly or as what I would catch now. And when I met you guys and I felt what that felt like, it was a stark difference of what I was experiencing. And so there was this like resistance of hanging out with that person because of who I felt I was becoming by hanging out with that person. And the older I got and the more aware I became, the more I started to see behaviors that didn't align with who I wanted to be, what I wanted to be known for, where I was going. And so over time, there was no like one conversation that ended it. It was just a slow, subtle saying no to different occasions when invited, and not reaching out and hanging out and doing more things with other people. And that relationship over time just dwindled and kind of faded away to the point where now we don't talk at all. So that process took about 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah. I think of three things. So it's like if there, and one of them is really similar to what you're talking about, James. But for like, if I think back to my friendships that were the closest, uh, beside the two of you, and I'm not really close with any of these friends anymore. Um, there's three things that like I would avoid if I were anybody listening to this and wanting to focus on really good friendships. The first is friends who don't make you feel good, like friends who put you down, or friends
Mhm.
who are just negative to you, or they don't inspire you to be better. They like I had a friend who would actively just make fun of me, and it was always like a competition between us, and they would use me at their expense. And I felt lame when I was with them, like I felt like I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't cool enough, or they were always going to be better than me. And they did it, whether it was on purpose or unintentionally. That's the way that they made me feel. And so, um, that's one. Like, if your friends don't make you feel good, if they don't lift you up, like the two of you always encouraged me, believed in me. If there was something I was subconscious, or not subconscious, self-conscious about, you would unpack that with me and help me work through that. If your friends aren't doing that, if they're making you actually more self-conscious, you need to stay away from them. The second was friends who are just bad influences on you. So there was a period of time where I was friends with a group of folks who, um, we did things that I didn't want to do anymore, and I didn't like who I became as a result of it. And like every time I would hang out with these friends, they would like that's what we would do. And so I remember saying like, "Hey, I'm not going to do this anymore," and it became weird, so I just stopped hanging out with them. And so that's the other thing. Like, if you want to give up something, or if you want to change some aspect of your life and your friend group is not moving in that same direction, sometimes you do need to step away from that friendship. And if the friendship isn't strong enough to survive that, then it's not strong enough to care about. And then the third is, and this is probably my closest friend, before you guys, that I'm really not friends with much anymore. It is, somebody who every time you talk to them, it's like the conversation is about them. Like every time. They don't, it's never, they don't ever ask you the same level of questions that you ask them. They don't ever like help you work through your problems the way you help them work through their problems. And it's like they are the center of their universe, and you are a planet that is in their orbit. Um, and I think just any of those types of friends that I've had all types of them in the past, made this friendship feel so much different. Like, this friendship helped me recognize a lot of those things. But I also know that not everyone is fortunate enough to have the ideal friendship. So for those of you who do, hold on to it. And for those of you who don't, just know that that's not, those three things, that's not how it's supposed to feel, right? This is what it's supposed to feel like.
It's good stuff, boys. Real good stuff. I'll share my experience from when I was much younger and had probably zero self-awareness, as you alluded to, James. I think at that time it was just very instinctual for me, because even to this day, even though I have not spoken to my really close friends, through high school, or slightly after high school, if they were to hit me up right now, I'd be like, yo, like, what's going on, man? Like, we'd catch up. I'd ask if there's anything that I could help them with, whatever. Like, there was no like ill will or anything bad, but I did just have this recognition that it's like, man, there is something that, and I'm careful with this word, but like, there's something that's just not as inspiring, right? That there's something of value, and there's something that motivates me here, and I'm just going to trust it. So much like you, James, like, it wasn't necessarily a like, okay, like, I'm severing you off, we're done, but I just, like, certain things we were doing, I just wasn't interested in doing anymore. Like, I played video games in high school, and there's nothing wrong with video games, but when we started hanging out, I had no interest in playing video games. I wanted to explore the world. I wanted to, adventure with you guys because there was so much fun and life to it. And that's not going to be for everybody. But for me, that is what I wanted, and I wanted to do that with you guys. So, um, yeah, it's I think Johnny, you laid out like kind of these steps to be like very cognizant of if
What
you
not to
are,
do. Yeah.
what not to do, or what to do if you're seeing those signs that he mentioned, and if you have to pull the cord, you got to pull the cord.
Yeah. I think on the flip side of that, someone who is goal oriented helps with creating the contrast between who's going to be supportive and who's not. And I think one thing that we've all had and have talked about regularly is a direction, a purpose, a vision, a goal, something that we're working toward that we can support each other on. Like, how many times, Johnny, have you talked about your goals with running and with your company that you're a part of, like where you want to go and what you want to experience? And we're like, yeah, like tell us more about that. How can we help you with that? Like, have you thought about it this way? Or, dealing with a challenge at work and we talking through that. Seth, for you, is like, I want to go work at this place. I want to go do this thing. I want to travel here. Like, there was always a direction that we wanted to go in. And we weren't as like crystal clear on what the goal was every single time, but we knew enough to move. And it was in the movement that we then could dance with each other in the pursuit of whatever that direction was. And I think that's really critical for any friendship, is like, where is it going? Otherwise,
Yeah.
when you're together, like, yeah, there is cool moments where you could just shoot the shit. Yeah, those are those moments, but like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Well, and it should be the answer to that should be the opposite of those three things I said to avoid, right?
Yeah.
What we should be doing. So the first thing to avoid is people who make you feel bad about yourself. So one of the things that the friendship is doing, this friendship does this for me, is you both make me feel good about myself.
Yeah.
If I'm like feeling insecure about something or I'm unsure about myself, I come to the two of you, I seek your counsel, I seek your advice, and you both build me back up and make me feel better, right? The second thing that we said to avoid was like friends that are a bad influence on you or that don't support your goals. So like if I have a fitness goal or I quit drinking this year, like I haven't had a drink of alcohol, I know that if I tell you that, you're not going to judge me for it or make me feel stupid or make fun of me or avoid inviting me to things because I don't drink or any of that. You're just going to support me and rally around my goal. So that's super important. And then the third thing was friends that make it all about them, right? And so these first two things are impossible if you both just made it all about you. You want to talk about me, right? Every time we get together, we talk about all three of us. We make a point to do that. Like, what's going on in your world? What's going on in your world? What's going on in your world? And we create space for each of those conversations.
Yes.
And go deep in each of those conversations. So I think like that's the recipe, right?
Yeah.
Like it's lift each other up, support each other in your goals, and create space to let each of us be ourselves.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like just in our own conversations, when one of us is quiet for too long or doesn't feel like we're engaged, like we were like quick to be like, dude, you're
You good?
quiet. Yeah, like what's going on? And we'll stop everything to address the absence
Yeah.
of the energy that is usually there that creates the triangle, success triangle, Seth. We're quick to notice it and we're quick to say it, not just
Yeah.
notice it and not say it, because then it just creates awkward tension of like, I want to say it, but I don't know where or how or if I should say it. So then in your head, you're thinking, should I say it, when you're not even in the conversation anymore? And that also creates a void. And then it just feels forced. And like, we're really good at picking that up and also calling it out, and then also not taking it personally and being like, yeah, let's explore that. And through that exploration, it actually brings us back into the holy trifecta.
Holy triumvirate. No, it's interesting. As we're going through this, I'm kind of like reflecting on those times where we had some tips, right? Like, so, for everybody listening, like, it's been acknowledged that we have different personalities. Like, James and Johnny, when these are two bulls, right? These are two alphas. When they have a disagreement, and this hasn't happened in a long time, might I add, but like, especially when we were younger, right? Like if there was an issue, right? It's like they would go at it, there would be a healthy debate, we'll say. And then kind of on the flip side with me, and you
About
guys know this,
about the dumbest shit, just to be clear.
dumbest, dumbest. But let me add this with me, like, and I'd kind of go the opposite. I'd kind of withdraw a little bit, right? And you guys know that. But what would you guys say in those moments when we're arguing over the dumb shit or withdrawing over the dumb shit? What is like the key contributor? Like we talked about identifying the positives of friendship, like or what makes a successful friendship or relationship. What are like for me, and I'll start is like I think it's those few moments where we're not seeking understanding in one another. Like almost we're putting our selfish needs above the rest of the group. Um, so for me, that's where I stand on it, but I would love your guys' insights to it.
Yeah. I mean, I could, if you want to go, Johnny, I could summarize it pretty
No,
quickly.
you go.
I think it's competitive versus cooperative communication.
Mm.
I think in those arguments that you just mentioned, I wanted to win. I didn't want to understand.
Yep.
Yeah.
Spot on. I think about two particular arguments that we had. One was really dumb, and it was about the whether or not you could say we are in agreement on something versus saying we are in agreement. And James said we're in agreement. We're in
No,
like
I said that. I said it. We were driving. I think
that's
I was
right. And I was backing up Seth.
And yeah, I was like, bro, like it's all good. Like we could be wrong on this.
Like no.
You said we were driving?
Right. No, we were at a club.
Yeah, we were at a club. We were at a club that had like a bank vault. And no, dude, no, I don't remember Seth saying it. The way I remember it is James said we're in agreement, and you said it, and I said, you mean we're in agreement? And you're like, no, you can say agreement. And I said, no.
No, Seth did say it.
I for sure said it.
And then I said it again. So maybe that's what you caught.
Maybe I didn't hear Seth say it in the first place. Maybe I did, and I don't remember. I mean, obviously we were drinking, but but it was it was such a stupid argument. But I think it was what was so weird about it was like part of it was in that moment. I remember thinking like, why are you going to argue with me about this, James? Like I'm the guy who knows about language, like I'm the English nerd in the friendship. Like that's my role. So don't step on my role. Like I'm not going to argue with you about the proper form for a push-up. So don't argue with me about how to speak English. Which is silly. Like that's an arrogant way to approach it. And that was just such a stupid argument. So I agree. It's like, I think some of it is like when your role feels threatened too in the friendship, at least for me, which is a total like ego thing that I've obviously worked on and gotten over the past several years. I don't think that's as much of a thing for me anymore, but that was a source of it. The other goes straight to the seek to understand thing, which is actually a very meaningful argument that we had about like how we were brought up and like the different challenges that we faced. All of it was obviously amplified by alcohol. And like, had we not been drinking, I think we would have had more space in seeking to understand each other. But definitely that's the thing. I think the thing that saved us in all of those situations was like after the fact, once we'd been, slept, woken up, sobered up, we always like came back to each other and talked through it. And I, to be honest, I don't even remember the situation, Seth, that you and I had, but I remember where we were. We were in, like, I think it's called Half Shell. You remember this?
Oh yeah. Half Shell. Yeah.
Half Shell, 21st or 22nd birthday, I think at Half Shell before going out.
Yeah, maybe. And it was like, I don't remember what it was about, but you and I had a moment and you like set a boundary with me and you're like, hey, dude, this thing that you did really upset me. And I just want you to know, like, I don't want you to ever do that again. Like that'll really like break things if you did that. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
I wish I did.
That's
sorry
okay.
That I don't.
I don't even remember what exactly it was about, but that moment stuck with me. So I think that's the thing that we always did was we always came back to each other and said like, hey, this thing that you did really upset me. And this is how it made me feel. And we always created space and understood each in those moments. Then we did seek to understand, like we were willing to have that follow-up conversation and not just kind of like brush it under the rug and let it, eventually erode the friendship over a long period of time.
Yeah, true. And then became stronger when we acknowledged it.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, Johnny, I would say you said something earlier that I think really everybody, myself included, just needs to hear over and over from time to time, which is like if you have these kind of friendships already, like hold on to them. I think back to when James, you were rushing for your fraternity. And that was the first time in our friendship, it was like, oh, like if like looking back, the real issue Johnny and I had, Johnny, I don't mean to speak for you, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was just insecurity. It was like,
Yeah.
is James leaving us? Are we losing our best friend? I think we probably masked that insecurity with blaming other things, thinking like the worst and James is going to change and all this. So, no, like I think it is important to give one another the space to grow outside of our friendship. And because what happens, especially when you do hold on to it, is they in turn get to share those experiences with you. Like I was basically an honorary member of James's fraternity. I was like living rent free at your guys' place, even though I didn't live there. And then I was going to all these fraternity parties every day with James. So like it's having that faith in one another, to say like, yes, this is different. Maybe this means less time, but it's benefiting our best friend. So we need to be happy for him. And in turn, he gets to share all the benefits of that with us.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, you can speak on my behalf anytime.
And I think that's critical. And through all of our fights, that not once did I ever say this is the end of our relationship.
Yeah.
It was, even though they got heated, it was just like they just got heated. Like it was not like, oh, we're not gonna be together anymore, or like, what does that mean for our future? It was like, I think when you love something or someone so much, you get all sides, right? Like pain, pleasure, and if you can't accept all sides, then I think then you force people to be only a certain way when there's so much more than that, and then resentment can start to grow in that relationship because they feel like they can't be anything other than what you think they should be. And I think we were good at not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think that we always fulfilled a need for each other, and I think that every relationship, even when we were upset with each other or when we fought about something stupid, at the once we on the whole we still the friendship still fulfilled a significant need in an important way to where it was worth it for us to overcome whatever the stupid argument was and have that follow-up conversation. Because I think the bottom line, every relationship that you have in your life, whether you realize it or not, fulfills a need for you.
Yeah, totally.
And so like some of it is like your marriage, you may have, it's a responsibility that you've created. So it fulfills a need. Hopefully it's a healthy thing. But even if you're in a bad relationship and you're sticking through it, that's still technically fulfilling a need that you have to like fulfill your, like live up to your commitment to that you made to somebody. Like it all, no matter what the relationship, it always comes down to it's doing something for you. If it wasn't, you would leave it.
Correct.
And when I go back to those other friendships that I talked about earlier, I did leave them because it got to a point where it's doing nothing for me. It wasn't worth having that conversation. But you guys were always worth having that conversation because you did always like you did those other things that that I value to this day. Even now that it's more inconvenient to have my two best friends not living in the same city as me, it doesn't matter because the need is significant to have in my life.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you, boys.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
Duty calls with babies. Just got the text. So I think we covered some pretty good stuff, and I would love to continue to do episodes like this where we pick a topic and we basically go into the backyard metaphorically and sit around the fire and talk. So those listening, if you enjoyed this, let us know. So I appreciate you guys being here. Hopefully you got some wisdom from what we've been through, all of our ups and downs, and love you both. Any last words you guys want to share?
Just love you boys. This was great.
Yeah, love you both. James, thanks for having us. Appreciate
Yes,
it.
thank you.
Of course.